And now, it's time for the Runnin' Rams Basketball Hour with Coach Jim Barron, presented by Rhode Joe's Saloon, legendary food and drink at 920 WHJJ.
Good evening and welcome to the Runnin' Rams Basketball Hour right here at Rhode Joe's Saloon. Legendary food and drink, great deals every night. Find out what's going on here at Rhode Joe's by following them on Facebook at facebook.com/Rhode Joe's Saloon. And the URI Rams had a terrific week. Tough couple of wins, one on the road against Duquesne and staying on the road and beating Fordham as well. We'll talk to Jim Barron in a little bit. He's finishing up practice back on campus. He'll be down with us shortly. And Jamal Wilson's going to be with us, who has been inserted into the starting lineup for Rhode Island. And since that's happened, the Rams are 2-0, the win against Duquesne and that win against Fordham as well. And Jamal putting up some very strong numbers with 8 points in the Massachusetts game prior to getting the start. And then he came up against Duquesne with 14 points, 4 rebounds, and 5 assists, and followed that one up with a strong effort against Fordham as well. So we'll talk to him about his recent success, and certainly that is part of what has turned this team into a strong finisher, which is great news. A couple of games to go, a big one coming up on Wednesday against George Washington at home. It's senior night at the Ryan Center just a couple of nights from tonight. Tickets still available, 874-RAMS, 874-RAMS, GoRhody.com. Got to get out to the game on Wednesday. Could be the last chance to see the URI Rams on campus this year, depending on where they head in the postseason, but and whether they have a home game in the Atlantic 10. Hopefully they'll get the bye and be able to go right to Atlantic City. We'll talk about that scenario in this segment as well. Matt Swiss joins us, who is a student at the University of Rhode Island and writes Swiss Beat, which you can find on GoRhody.com, a chronicle of the season for the University of Rhode Island. A lot of feature stories done by Matt with this URI men's basketball team, and I know it's an exciting time for you, as it is for all of us getting into the stretch run. And in years past, there's been always some challenges for Rhode Island in that stretch run, and this year they have 2 wins behind them, 2 games to go, and a chance to really finish on a high note going into postseason play.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it seems like in years past, like you said, they get off to these hot starts, especially in a non-conference, and then as conference play comes to begins, toward the end is when they struggled a little bit. They lost some games in the last couple of years late in the season that you would have loved to have back, and this year was almost the opposite. They had a tough couple losses in the beginning of this season, but now good chance to ride a 4-game win streak into the A-10 tournament, beating Duquesne on the road, Fordham on the road, and like I said, a huge game coming up this Wednesday, followed by St. Bonaventure next weekend. So it'll be a nice chance for them to be riding some momentum into the A-10 tournament, something that they haven't really been able to do the last couple of years because of some late-season losses that they'd like to have back.
Yeah, this one certainly is just the most important game of the year come Wednesday night. They playing a team that on earlier Saturday afternoon they were tied with George Washington. Having not played each other, you basically look at that as essentially a flat-out tie. GW loses to Temple. Rhode Island beats Fordham, so they go a game ahead. So Rhode Island, important that they get the win Wednesday. It'll allow them to win the tiebreaker against George Washington and really kind of put them behind them. And essentially, more likely than not, depending on how things play out, make that Saturday game against Fordham almost inconsequential because they'll have locked into that 4th and final bye spot in the Atlantic 10 tournament. Huge, because not only do they advance directly to the Atlantic 10 for the quarterfinals, but also they get some much-needed rest, and they've been playing a short rotation, a lot of minutes for all the players on the team, and to have that Tuesday off, that first Tuesday, the first round day off completely, and just head down to New Jersey a couple of days after that would be a godsend for this team.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, this team has had a lot of trouble with injuries and a couple of other things going on that have shortened the rotation a bit and limited the depth. And luckily now, like I said, they got Jamal Wilson, who's been covering a lot of minutes that weren't there in the beginning. Guys like Delroy James and Marquise Jones have had to play extended minutes that, maybe you would like to avoid if you could. But out of necessity, these guys are playing 35, 36, 37 minutes a game. So that extra rest would be great. But like I said, you can't overlook George Washington coming off a big win over Duquesne and then the follow-up win against Fordham. Like we talked about, you can't, you're on a high note. You certainly can't look past George Washington because they're still in a position where if they can beat Rhode Island, then the 4 seed is open to them as well. If they had beat Rhode Island this Wednesday, then the records are equal and the tiebreaker belongs to them. So George Washington certainly not a team that you can look past. They're coming in just looking for a big win, the same way the URI is. It's Rhode Island's senior day. Obviously, the guys want to go out on top. Like you said, it could be the last chance they get to play at home. So really got to bring it your all. You can't rely so much on the wins that you've had and take a step off the gas. You got to keep going.
Absolutely. Matt Swiss with us, student at the University of Rhode Island and the author of Swiss Beats, which you can catch on GoRhody.com throughout the season. I know you just started a new story today on the seniors. It is senior night coming up on Wednesday night at the Ryan Center, and you've got a feature story coming out about that group of guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit different than most stories that I do. Most stories are, focused on what you see on the court and what these guys bring every day and practice and things like that. But this story is going to kind of give you an inside look at the guy's personality. You know what I mean? There's four of them. They get along so well. They have such a great bond with Ben and Will and Marquise and Delroy. A lot of, they've become great friends over the years, and they have a lot of stories to share, a lot of experience with one another, a lot of big games they've played in that have, enabled them to grow so close as a group. And that's what I hope that this story will kind of show, is that, there's more to these guys, that they're just regular kids at the end of the day. They're just college students. They're funny kids. They got a lot of memories, a lot of jokes between them. So I kind of hope that that's what this story portrays a little bit.
And Will Martell and Marquise Jones, who have been there from the start to the finish in that group of guys, about to become, if Rhode Island finishes off strong, the winningest senior class that has been fully engaged since their freshman year with the University of Rhode Island. Keith Cothran and Lamont Ulmer hold that honor now, but looks like Will and Marquise, one game away right now, an opportunity to do that with at least 3 more games to play for Rhode Island, the 2 regular season games, and then at least one A-10 tournament game, and you got to say at least 4 because they're going to go to a tournament after that as well. So a minimum of 4 games to go, and they need to win 2 for these 2 guys to be the all-time winningest players at the University of Rhode Island. So a nice nod for them coming up as well. Let's take a look, Matt, while we have the time, at what might be the matchups in the first round, and additionally beyond that in the Atlantic 10 tournament coming up before Atlantic City and in Atlantic City as well. As of now, URI is in 4th place at 9-5, and they have one of the byes. It's Xavier and Temple at the top spots. Richmond is 3rd, and then URI has bumped out Duquesne. Duquesne, kind of a tough stretch for them after finally losing a game, 8-0 to start in league play. Then they dropped the game, and they've dropped now 5 of their last 6 ball games. So the way it looks now, if it all ended today, that the first round games on Tuesday, a week from tomorrow, would be Duquesne hosting St. Joe's, George Washington hosting St. Louis, Dayton at home against LaSalle, and UMass hosting St. Bonaventure. That would be the game between the 2 teams right in the middle of that 8-team pack that will be playing in the first round. Charlotte and Fordham would be out. So St. Joe's at Duquesne, St. Louis at GW, LaSalle at Dayton, St. Bonaventure at UMass. If you could pick an upset, Joe's, St. Louis, LaSalle, or St. Bonaventure, somebody winning on the road, with those matchups, where would you look for the upset special in that Tuesday game in any of those 4 games?
Well, I mean, I think the obvious choice would be, it's easy to say St. Bonaventure could go into Massachusetts and win because, like you said, they are both in the middle of the pack and both, similar
pretty
records.
Comparable, yeah.
Yeah, it's so difficult to distinguish between those 2 teams in the middle there. If I had to pick one upset, as crazy as it might sound, I think that Charlotte still has a chance to sneak in as that 12 seed. I think they host St. Joe's with just 1 game behind them, so if they could beat them at home in the final game of the season, then they sneak in because they own the same record, but they own the tiebreaker. And I think Charlotte is a team that could actually give Duquesne some trouble. Difficult team to figure out. I mean, they took Rhode Island to the final buzzer, beat Tennessee, beat Xavier. They went to Georgia Tech and won there. I think if I had to pick one, I could see Charlotte still sneaking into that 12 seed and maybe pulling off an upset with Duquesne because, like you said, Duquesne's been struggling, losing 5 of 6, with the only win coming against Massachusetts. Not exactly right on momentum into the tournament. Could overlook a team like Charlotte, who has won some big games. Almost beat Rhode Island at the Ryan Center. So I can almost see Charlotte upsetting Duquesne in that first round.
All right, so it's a double upset. First of all, Charlotte has to get in and then play against Duquesne, and then they'd have to go and win that one as well. So you're really going on a limb there, Matthew. We're going to keep an eye on that. Games left for Rhode Island. They're hosting George Washington, and they're on the road against St. Bonaventure. Tough place to play. So 2 difficult games for Rhode Island. Not in the upper echelon of the league, but a tough place to play, and only in New York against a pretty good St. Bonaventure team, and then a home game against a George Washington team that's bigger than Rhode Island and presents some matchup problems for URI with very big guards and big right right around the order. For George Washington, it's at URI, and then home against Dayton. And Dayton, a different team on the road than they are at home, but still a difficult matchup for them in their final game. Duquesne is home against Bonaventure and then on the road against Richmond. So two pretty tough contests for them, for a team that is really losing grip on any type of momentum that they had. UMass, who seems to only be able to beat Rhode Island, and they lost all the games in between their rematch with Rhode Island, and since then have stumbled as well. They've got Temple and at Fordham to finish up. So Temple game is going to be a tall mountain to climb for them, and then at Fordham still looking for their first win in league play on the season, so UMass should be able to go in there and get the job done. It looked like a beaten team that Rhode Island played yesterday in that Saturday in that Fordham contest. And St. Bonaventure is at Duquesne, a big matchup for them, and then home against Rhode Island, so they really have a tough final couple before they call it a day in the regular season. You hear a lot about jockeying for position for the NCAA tournament, and you hear talk about the Big East maybe getting 11 teams in this tournament, which is just an incredible thought. A league that has 16 teams in it, to get 11 of them in the tournament. Possibility, though, and there's certainly a strong year for them. It is a little bit of an ebb year for the Atlantic 10. They've had years where they've had 5 or 6 teams that are really vying for an opportunity to go in the NCAA tournament. Not really the case this time around. You would think outside of a real run by somebody in the tournament, you're looking at 2 teams in, maybe 3. That third would be Richmond, with Xavier and Temple pretty much locks. Richmond in or out. I know Joe Lenardi, who does the bracketing, has them as one of the last teams in right now. But what are your thoughts? Is Richmond deserving of a spot in the NCAA tournament?
Well, I mean, I think, as is the case so often, it's going to depend on what they do from here on out.
Sure.
I mean, it's difficult to say right now whether a team's going to be in or out, aside from a team like Temple and Xavier, like you said, who are locks. But Richmond, if you're looking at maybe just a win or 2 in Atlantic City in the A10 tournament, I think that they got to be in. If they could get to the finals, then I think that they're deserving to be the third team from the A10 to get into the dance.
Absolutely, I think if they get that far, the question is, if they finish up with a couple of wins and get bumped out early, where do they end up? Are they on the outside looking in? And because they have some very good wins, but they also have some not so great losses.
Yeah,
they lost to was it Bucknell earlier this year, and the loss to Rhode Island is looking better and better because Rhode Island's doing well down the stretch, so that's less of a glaring loss. But they've got some nights when they just didn't show up, and there's some other nights when they've played very well against very good competition. So they're a tough team to figure out, and they're the best chance for the Atlantic 10 to get 3. And then you hope that a team can make a run outside of those 3 to go and win the championship, right, and get the automatic bid, which is the only possibility of getting you to 4. If Richmond were to play someone other than Temple and Xavier in the final and lose, then there's a chance of 4 for the Atlantic 10. Outside of those 3 teams, if there was a team that you say has a chance to make that type of a run, get to the finals with a chance to win the championship, of the remaining teams, the other 11 teams, or 9 effectively, with a couple of them not making it to the tournament to begin with, who's your dark horse?
Honestly, not to appear biased, but I think Rhode Island. I think if you had to pick one, I think Rhode Island. I mean, Dayton it can be day and night, playing at home and on the road. Like you said, that great home team. They don't do so well on the road. A team like Duquesne, who we talked about a few weeks ago as one of the top tier teams, has not shown its true colors, but has struggled of late, losing 5 or 6. So you don't really have much confidence in them making a run. A team like Rhode Island, I mean, once they get in, if they could get that top 4 and they get by in the first round against probably Duquesne as a 5 seed and advance, you might be able to match up well. You hope, at least, with a guy like Jamal Wilson, who's been getting a lot of playing time. So much relies on him, I think, because he brings that defense that maybe you didn't have at the beginning of the season as a great one-on-one defender, a guy who can match up with like a 2 Holloway or Juan Fernandez and slow down what those 2 teams want to do. And so much of what URI does relies on their three-point shot. I mean, you go down and play a team like Pittsburgh and hit 14 threes and you're right in the game. If you can put together one of those performances, if you can knock down your shots from outside, then that makes things so much easier. If you get to the free throw line, a lot to be determined, but I think if you had to pick one, I don't see Dayton going on the road, going into Atlantic City and winning, and I don't see Duquesne with the lack of momentum that they have right now. I don't see them making a run I think that Rhode Island is a team that could make a run.
Yeah, Rhode Island's problem is that they don't match up well with Xavier and Temple, not only because Xavier and Temple are good teams, but just because they're more physical and they're bigger down low. But you bring up a good point. Jamal Wilson's addition to the starting lineup and getting a lot more minutes than he was when they played either of those two teams, which was basically a non-participant at that time. He becomes a factor defensively, gives you a big guard, somebody that can neutralize some of the guard strength for both those teams and keep you in the ball game defensively a little bit more. And Rhode Island would see Xavier effectively in that second game if indeed they matched up with Duquesne in that 4-5 game. They would take on the top team in the division, assuming that Xavier were to win their first game, which would be the quarterfinal game. So that'd be a difficult matchup for Rhode Island. I think if they can stay away from Temple, they've got a shot. Temple seems to be, even more so than Xavier, the one team that Rhode Island does not have many answers for.
Yeah, I mean, losing to them 3 times last year, you had them on the ropes at home. The game that went to overtime, you ended up losing by a couple points. But then when you went down there and they handled you pretty well, and in the Atlantic tournament over in Atlantic City, lost by 13, I think it was, but it really was, 13 was kind. Temple kind of took control of that game and had it for the better part of the afternoon. But like you said, Xavier might be a team that you can match up with a little bit better. You got some guys like Delroy and Ben Eves. If they can, play a little bit better in the interior, work the ball down low and play a little bit better on the post, then Xavier might be a team that you can match up with a little bit better.
Well, Matt Swiss, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it. Again, some great insight into the University of Rhode Island and the Atlantic 10 as well. Swiss Beats on GoRhody.com. You can check them out. Not only does you really have the when's the next one up on the seniors? When will that be up? Don't want to put any pressure on you. But don't sit here and eat the chicken wings all night. You got to go home and do some writing here.
It'll be either tomorrow night or first thing Wednesday.
All right, first thing Wednesday. I feel like a teacher right now, right?
Yeah.
Let's have that on time, Mr. Swiss. Besides that, you can also get the past stories that you've done on GoRhody.com as well. So look back on the archives at some of the stories that Matt has put together throughout the season. Good stuff indeed. That's all on GoRhody.com. Check it out if you can, and we'll see you on Wednesday at that George Washington game as well at 7 o'clock start for senior night at the University of Rhode Island at the Ryan Center. So a very, very special night indeed. Matt Swiss with us for the first segment. We've got plenty coming up. Jim Barron will be joining us a little later. Jamal Wilson will be on hand as well, and some more surprises around the corner. It's all at Rhode Joe's Saloon, legendary food and drink. Great deals every single night. Find out what's happening by following them on Facebook at facebook.com/Rhode Joe's Saloon. We'll be back with more right after this on the Rams Radio Network.